So once you have got used to hearing a language, the next technique, the follow-on technique, which is called shadowing, this comes from a gentleman called Professor Argelis, who's a very well-known member of the language learning community. It's a technique called shadowing, and this is now where you parrot what you're listening to. Now, if you try and start out with something as complicated as Schweik or the news, at first it'll just overwhelm you. So start with something easier. So a good starting point might be to use a textbook that has a lot of audio content. As I mentioned earlier, this is a very popular textbook, but it doesn't have much audio content, so I don't recommend it. My two favorites for learning Czech, actually, at the early to beginners to intermediate level, are Do You Want to Speak Czech? Volume 1, and Do You Want to Speak Better Czech? This is Volume 2. These are excellent, excellent books, not just because they teach the language very well, which I think they do. They are my favorites for getting to an intermediate level. But more importantly, they come with a great deal of audio. So the first volume here, it actually has inside it 4 CDs with hours and hours of Czech. We're covering all sorts of stuff. And the second volume, this only has 3 CDs, but again, it's many, many hours of Czech, and it's only in Czech. That's important. You want to get good at listening to Czech, not good at listening to English. So get a course, for example, that one, which I highly recommend. Another one which I highly recommend is Czech from the Asimil series. This is a really, really good book. It has about 100 lessons, and each lesson has Czech on one page, and unfortunately only French on the other side. So if you can't speak perhaps intermediate level French, it might not be the best choice. But maybe you can just cope with the Czech side, I don't know. But it's a great book. It's a pity there's no English version. And it comes with audio. And that's essential, because just reading is going to make you very good at reading. It won't help you with listening. I would say you should spend far more time listening to the audio materials for a language course than you spend actually reading. Now, some people don't like to do that because it doesn't seem like the same hard work that you get when you're studying in the book. But it's vital. You're not trying to spend your time proving that you're working hard. You're trying to spend your time training your brain to be able to cope with the language. So let me choose a lesson in here. Lesson 17 at the post office. Oops. Okay, so what you could do is read. Jsem na poště, můj pes Blesk čeká venku. Venku vidím Karla a Evu. Stojím frontu u okýnka. Chci poslat doporučený dopis. And it goes on and on and on. You see? Now, you can read that. Fine, you'll get good at reading. But if you listen to it...
17. lekce. Na poště.
Jsem na poště. Můj pes Blesk čeká venku. Venku vidím Karla a Evu. Stojím frontu u okýnka. Chci
So, what we're going to do now is the shadowing technique, which presumes we've heard the word endings, but now we want to be able to repeat them. And this reinforces it in our brains and also gets us used to making the sounds of the language. And the idea is that you listen to each of these recordings many, many times, 10 times each maybe, until your brain has absorbed them and you can say them almost at the same time. So let's try it.
17.
17.
lekce.
lekce.
Na poště.
Na poště.
Jsem na
Jsem
poště.
na poště.
Můj pes
Můj pes Blesk
čeká
venku.
venku.
Venku
vidím
vidím
Karla
Karla
a
a
Evu.
Eva.
Stojím
Stojím
u
Okénka.
okýnka. Chci poslat
Chci poslat
doporučený dopis.
doporučený dopis.
Beru podací lístek
lístek
a vyplňuji ho. Napřed jméno, pak adresu.
So you see, it's actually very difficult. Even doing it myself, keeping up with it is quite difficult. But it's very important because it keeps your brain on red alert. You're listening very intently. You're trying to say it just as you're hearing it and so on. Very, very difficult. But it's vital. This is then the second stage in language learning. Try to do this with audio that you can almost hear. Well, you can hear and you can almost understand. And you'll find then that you associate speaking with hearing and you start to comprehend. You start to comprehend what's going on. And after more practice with this, you can try doing it with the radio now or with the TV. Try to say things at the same time that they're saying them. And you'll stumble, you'll make mistakes because listening and speaking at the same time and repeating isn't very easy. But it's vital training. So this is the shadowing technique. It's the second stage in understanding how to hear something. And the next technique I'm going to talk about is based on how to up your vocabulary from listening and how to cope with things that you don't understand at all. And this is called extensive listening. We've so far been talking about intensive listening, listening very closely. Now we're going to talk about extensive listening. Next we're going to talk about extensive listening. And extensive listening means listening to a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff. Some people say you need to listen to 10,000 hours of a language before you're fully comfortable with hearing that language. Now if you think about that, imagine you're doing 3 hours a day. That would mean that it will take you 10 years. And I think that's probably realistic with Czech. I believe that in 10 years of listening for 3 hours a day, you would be at a very high standard of comprehending audio input. But that's not realistic, of course, 10 years. The good news is that even within an hour or two a day for a year, it does sound like a long time, but with an hour or two a day for a year or two, you'll start to be very good. But by the end of 10 years, 3 hours a day, you would be fantastic. Okay, we'll leave it there. The next video is going to go on about this extensive listening and some very specific techniques that help you to achieve it. Thanks.